About a year ago, I praised the OnePlus 9 Pro, but now it's even better. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and here we are again with the same looking OnePlus 9 Pro, only this phone is technically different. Either way, let's talk about my experience. Okay, let's just get to the point. This phone is just a phone, and that's what makes it so appealing. It does a lot of things and does them well. At the end of the day, the only complaint that I really have is with the software, mainly being that OnePlus is kind of slacking on updating their phones on time and actually changing features altogether, like how the ambient display is still here, but hidden in a power saving mode to help promote the always on display. But now here we are about 135 words into this review, and I'm just going to tell you what you ultimately want to hear. Yes, this phone is worth the value in 2023, but I fear for the future. I'm using it at a max resolution and max brightness, and the battery life is just not that good. A couple hours of screen on time is expected before dying, making a day usage possible but questionable for those attached to their phones. However, I was not, and that's because of the hardware inside. The processor is snappy and just lets you do what you want to do and get back to normal life. Of course, there are a lot of time-burning apps that you can use on this phone, but they do also burn through your battery, but in a sense, that's also okay. This is because of the super fast 65-watt charger that you can use on this phone, which will ultimately give you a full charge in less than 40 minutes. And with the wireless charging going up to 50 watts, you'll never have to worry about your battery if there's an option to charge your phone. At the end of the day for me, this brings comfort, which is boring, but good. I'm not a fan of the color, I'm more a fan of the green color, but the price is what drew me into this phone. For $400 or less, you can get a used one, which comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM paired with 256 gigabytes of storage, which the latter is more than the 128 gigabytes that you get on the similarly spec'd S21 Ultra or S21 Plus, which are $450 and $375 at the low end, respectively. Now, I could just say words based on opinions all day, but we need to talk about what you get, starting with the inside. Like I said, you get 65 watts of wired and up to 50 watts of wireless charging on OnePlus chargers, but you also get reverse wireless charging, something that OnePlus doesn't even advertise, and for some reason was difficult for me to show off on here, but trust me, it does work. This is all to power or be powered by the 4500 milliamp cell, which again, lasts all day with normal usage, but feels impossible to do 2-day usage. This powers the Snapdragon 888 chip with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage, which ties up to be a perfect package. This allows for a snappy experience with little to no time waiting for apps to run and games to render. Not to mention, OnePlus adds some gaming features which allows you to see your usage and FPS in case you're wondering. Of course, everything looks amazing thanks to that display, being a 6.7-inch 1440p 120Hz refresh rate OLED display that features 525 pixels per inch and LTPO display technology. Of course, just like all other LTPO devices that I've used, it claims better battery life but instead does nothing for it. Maybe it's better at a lower brightness, refresh rate, and resolution, but what's the point of that? Either way, it gets pretty bright at about 800 nits and goes even higher in direct sunlight, and features a hole punch for that okay camera. This is covered by Gorilla Glass 5, just like the rear, but as always, it can break, so don't be surprised if it does. Speaking of the back, we have the cameras, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but you get a flashlight, laser autofocusing unit, and a microphone for video, and I assume speaker calls. There's also a Hasselblad logo, which feels kind of tacky, but hey, at least it doesn't say the megapixel count. And most of the Hasselblad stuff is software, if you're wondering. Moving to the shiny aluminum frame, this is what gives this phone a little bit of heft at about 197 grams, though it is a pretty large phone. On the top, you get another microphone, while on the left side, there's a volume rocker. The right side gives you the classic alert slider, which may disappear if the OnePlus 11 series doesn't come with one. Either way, you get silent, vibrate, and ring, which is just like Apple's, but better. And under that is the power button. Speaking of vibrate, the vibrating motor is strange, but overall is the quality motor that you would expect. On the very bottom, we get a SIM tray for the single SIM, the second loudspeaker, and the USB-C 3.1 Gen 1 port, which in English means 5 gigabit per second transfer speed. But going back to the loudspeaker, this pairs with the little earpiece on the top of the screen and gives you a dual speaker setup that actually sounds pretty good. Also, if you haven't realized, the screen does curve a little bit, really not giving anything extra, and it doesn't cause any harm in my usage. Also, this has a very low fingerprint scanner, but don't worry about it because you won't use it as much because of the fast, but not as fast as the Pixel 7 Pro, face unlock. Last of all, we get IP68 dust and water resistance, as well as Wi-Fi 6 support, Bluetooth 5.2, and of course, a bunch of 5G bands, which also includes 3mm wave bands. Like I said, these specs are top of the line as you would expect on a $1,000 plus launch price phone, but now you can find this phone for around $400. To me, this is more than just some random phone, because it also has better software experience than most. What is strange to me is the cameras. We get the similar setup as the Pixel 7 Pro for half the price, just with some megapixels mixed up. Okay, maybe that's not the best comparison, but the main camera is a 48 megapixel wide sensor and is optically stabilized and bends down to 12 megapixels per shot, though you can shoot at 48 megapixels. For me, the camera does everything that I need, but close shots may give you some really small focusing distances, with some images kind of falling off. Still, the camera produces some vivid and accurate shots, though the coloring can be off sometimes. And for some reason, I noticed that night shots aren't really as good as they used to be. The other large sensor is a 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which bends down to 12.5 megapixel shots when needed. This is a focusing sensor as well, which means that you can get some really close macro shots and video, though the latter is kind of weird. Lastly, we have the 3.3 times telephoto zoom at 8 megapixels, which is better than what you would expect, but not a good camera zoom for the main sensor if you're expecting similar color. At least it's optically stabilized. The last camera is so pointless, a 2 megapixel monochrome sensor that does something? Moving on, we have to talk about video, which gives you some really nice results. Not as good as iPhones, but still either the same or even better than most Samsung devices. We get up to 4K 60 frames per second with the option of 4K at 120 frames per second for those that want to do 4K 30 frames per second at quarter speed, and it even supports 8K video at 30 frames per second. It's not entirely the best because of the high bitrate, but it is pretty good. Personally, I'm happy with this output, even though 4K at 120 frames per second and 8K video are limited to 5 minutes apparently. 4K 60 is not only fine with long recording, but it also allows you to switch between ultra-wide and standard sensors while recording. No telephoto though. Lastly, we get the front camera, which looks alright with the 16 megapixel sensor, but it is a fixed focus and only allows for 1080p at 30 frames per second. Like I said, looks fine, but boring. But let me give you some time with these shots that I took. Enjoy. Overall, nice camera set on the rear, but the front is boring. At the end of the day, you're buying a OnePlus device really for the software and user experience. Now, this one runs Android 12 with a promise of Android 13 coming in 2023, but that doesn't really change much. This is running Oxygen OS 12, which is getting some love and hate depending on who you talk to. It still features things that I would like, which is double tap to wake and sleep, but lacks things like a really good always on display that Pixel devices have, and the overall Android feel that people want but don't buy. Still, I very much enjoy this operating system, and I don't understand why it gets so much hate nowadays. This phone is just like the operating system to me. It does what I need, and it does it well. I hope that we get Oxygen OS 13 soon on this phone, but remember there's always a bunch of people out there that can help you unlock your bootloader and make it better if you don't feel like waiting. But again, this phone does what I need and at a reasonable price. And that's my review of the OnePlus 9 Pro, the Pro phone that just works. But what do you think? Is the OnePlus 7 Pro better than this? Let me know what you think, and as always, thanks for watching.